Jupa zino nam thar jilo shen lo gom ji kang bar son ba shin sen or guna cha zhen me ba tam tsen de ta che be gom chen lam ye gor shen ba me ba jen ji lo mo gu gom ji go vor son ba shin Meng a der go che be la ma la jun do so wa de be gom che na Jimin mo gu je wa jin ji lo ying me gom jing wo zhi son ba shin kan shar to be ngo so ma te ma ju de gar jo be gom shen nam gom cha lo ta Rawar jin ji lo nam do ngo che gur son ba shin ji ma yin ji yang char wa la Mangaro bar charve gom shenam kordeyen me tombar jenjilo kewa gundo yang dalatam dalme chigi balalon jim satalam ji yende razone dorje change gompan yor to sho dorje change gompan yor to sho. The Dharma expands palace of Akanishta is the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Bless me and all beings that our minds become Dharma. Bless us that the Dharma become the path. Bless us that the path dispel confusion. Bless us that confusion arises wisdom. And so to begin with today, I would like to ask you to please excuse me if I fall asleep in the middle of this. I'm rather jet-lagged. I just arrived from Nepal on Thursday evening. And if I'm slightly incoherent, that is also a result of jet lag. So I'm Sorry if any of that happens. At the moment, I'm feeling fine. I had some coffee at 10:30 in the morning, and that'll keep me going for a little while. So, and also, we started this series of Introduction to Buddhism teachings every Saturday afternoon in 2022. In May of that year, and then in October, I went to Nepal to go to our annual Long Life Puja, which held at Namabuddha. I hadn't been to Nepal for 2.5 years because of the epidemic, and it was time to go back. And I thought I was going back for 6 weeks. I even had a ticket back. Some of you who know how long it took me to get back will understand that, well, may wonder what actually happened with my ticket. Well, I lost it, basically. And while I was in Nepal, the Gyawan Karmapa, the head of our lineage, he's the one whose throne is on the right, if you can see it behind our shrine for Trungpa Rinpoche here. Said it would be good for me to go to the Kaju Gunchu, which was being held in northeast India, sort of in between, in that little neck of India that's in between Bhutan and Bangladesh. Tea country. Lots of tea plantations. So I went, and that took 6 weeks. And then I thought that at the end of this I might be able to come back here, but no. I had to go. That was the monks' winter teachings, and so the Karmapa asked me to please go to the nuns' spring teachings. So I, changed my ticket. Actually, I had to buy a new ticket at that point. It was supposed to be 3 weeks, so I figured, well, I'll give it 4 weeks, because it might go a couple days over. And then the schedule was changed. It was going to take 5 weeks, so I said, well, I'll change my ticket again. So I changed my ticket again. And then it was pretty clear that it was going to go even longer. So I had to change my ticket for a last time. And the teaching was mostly being held online. And by the end of the ticket, by the end of the month of April, I had already changed my ticket 4 times. And it was getting hot because I was in India, in Varanasi. It was getting up to like 36, 37 degrees, which actually was not so bad. Not in India where the weather was dry and where the buildings are built for keeping you cool, unlike here in Canada where 36 is just unbearable. But the teachings weren't quite done, so I went back I had to go to teach. I'd already arranged to teach in Maine, so I went to Maine and arrived in Maine, kind of jet-lagged, and started teaching. And I got word that our teacher, the founder of the monastery, Trungpa Rinpoche, was very ill. He was 90, 91 or 90. I don't remember what we're counting it as. I guess we're counting it as 91. He was actually 89 by Western counting, which is just a fluke of the difference of how you count ages in Tibetan versus how you count it in English. So I was in America, and it was quite serious for Rinpoche, we could tell, especially since it was because of his age, and he was in intensive care. So I knew I had to go back to Nepal for that. Even though I even had a ticket to come back here in May. After the teaching in Maine, I would come back here, and so there's another ticket down, another ticket wasted. And I flew off to Nepal. And as most of you know, Trungpa Rinpoche passed away in June on the very auspicious day, the full moon of the 4th Tibetan month, which is like one of the most sacred days of the Tibetan calendar, because it's the anniversary of the Buddha being born, achieving Buddhahood, and passing away. He did it on the same day, at least according to the Tibetan tradition, on the same day of the year, different years, of course. And so Rinpoche, he was in intensive care for exactly 1 month, from the 15th, the full moon of the 3rd Tibetan month, until the full moon of the 4th Tibetan month, and then he passed away on that day. And so for the next 7 weeks at our monastery in Namabuddha, we had a lot of people coming. We had all of our monks and nuns, not all, there were a few who were there's still, we have a separate nunnery, a couple of different monasteries, but most of them came to Namo Buddha and spent 7 weeks doing pujas. And so I participated in some of the pujas, but we also had a lot of work putting together a book of prayers, because a lot of lamas, great lamas, wrote some beautiful prayers requesting for Rinpoche to be reborn swiftly. So translating those and putting that book together, and then occasionally going to the pujas as I could, that took 7 weeks, actually longer than that. And so I just arrived back Thursday, about 8 months after I had originally planned to come back. And so so this is why I have been absent, why I have not been teaching these. I think that Acharya Sherab has been teaching a few of them in my absence. So, and now in this situation actually, because Rinpoche has not been cremated yet, his body has been preserved the traditional way, but the actual cremation will happen in November, on the 4th of November, which is also an important day in the Tibetan calendar. It's the anniversary of the day when the Buddha had gone to teach his mother, who had been reborn as a god. She had passed away when he was very young, when he was an infant really, and so he went to teach her in the heavens, and then he came back to earth on this particular day. And so that's one of the 4 sacred days of the Tibetan calendar. So we'll be having the cremation on that day, and I'll need to go back to Nepal for that. So we've got a couple months now where I'll be giving some of the talks, but there are also a lot of programs in the next couple of months. But we'll try to do as many talks on Saturdays as we can for the next couple of months. And so what I wanted to talk about today is kind of related to Rinpoche passing away. We've got this shrine to Rinpoche right here, right behind me. And it's very similar on the outside respect as the one that's built for Rinpoche, the same shape and sort of proportions and such as the one for Rinpoche in Namo Buddha. The one in Rinpoche for Rinpoche in Namo Buddha has his actual remains, which of course there's only one set of remains, so that's there. But we do have a few sacred things. Lama brought back a few pieces of Rinpoche's hair and his robes. And then he also had a few pieces of Rinpoche's bones from when he had an operation. And so these have been placed on the shrine too. So it's like there's some sort of a physical support for Rinpoche there. And it's not so much that it's necessarily a physical thing, but sometimes when there's something material, it helps you remember the qualities of Trungpa Rinpoche. And if this is your first time hearing about Trungpa Rinpoche, I'm sorry about this. But he was a great being who managed to build monasteries and nunneries all over the world. I mean, in Canada, India, Nepal, rebuilding the original monastery in Tibet, and then helping to rebuild it after that one was destroyed in an earthquake. And so he did an incredible amount in his lifetime. He was really responsible for resurrecting our teachings of philosophy in our Kagyu tradition after they were nearly lost in 1959. The person who really transmitted the teachings of philosophy in our particular school, which is one subset of one of several different Kagyu schools, but the main person who was responsible for reestablishing that was Trungpa Rinpoche. Without his having studied them first in Tibet and then teaching them to the next generation when he got to India in the 1960s, we wouldn't have any teachings of the transmission of that teaching that would have been lost. The whole oral tradition, because when you have a text, the teachings in the text don't give you everything. There's always something that comes from the explanation that the teachers give. So the one teacher teaches it, and then the next generation hears it, and then they pass it down to the next. And this is a transmission that the teachings have come to us through. And then Rinpoche spent many years, starting in the late 1970s, traveling all over the world. He first went to Taiwan, and at that time among Tibetans, anything to do with the Chinese, because of the Cultural Revolution and the destruction of so many monasteries in Tibet, anything to do with the Chinese was like bad. So he went to Taiwan. He told all the Tibetans, I'm going to Japan, but he went to Taiwan. And then he started traveling to the West and going to England, and then coming to Canada and North America. And he started traveling all over the world, in Asia and Malaysia, Hong Kong, Taiwan. He didn't go teaching in mainland China that much just because of the political situation. It was difficult. And when he came to the United States, a friend just said, do you want to go see a teaching by a Tibetan Lama? And I was kind of new to Buddhism at the time, and I said, sure, let's go, let's sign up. Who's the Lama? It's more like, first I've decided I wanted to go hear a teaching by a real live Tibetan master rather than knowing who the master was and making any intelligent choice. I just got kind of carried along. And it was Rinpoche. And I made a connection with him and studied with him for a few years, and then he asked me to move to Nepal and learn Tibetan and become a translator, which I did. And so I had a lot of opportunity after that, especially when serving as his teacher, as his student, as his translator, to receive a lot of teachings from Trungpa Rinpoche. And when you're in that sort of position, you're getting like a teaching, when you're traveling with Rinpoche for 4 or 5 months, and you're going to a new Dharma center every week, sometimes giving a couple of different teachings a week, especially the first years when Rinpoche was relatively young. He was in his 70s at that time. He was in his 70s, but I was having trouble keeping up with him even in my late 30s, early 40s. So, I received a lot of teachings, and yet when it came to be for the time to Rinpoche to pass away, on the one hand, you could see that Rinpoche was getting very old. His body was gradually declining, as happened to all of us. It happens to Rinpoche, even to great masters like Rinpoche. The body just declines. It's the nature of how things are. So, and he was giving in 2020, in March of 2020, just before the epidemic, when everything was sort of beginning to happen with the epidemic, we were having a teaching in Varanasi, and I was translating for Rinpoche at that time. And at the end of the teaching, Rinpoche apologized to me for not being able to teach the way he really wanted to teach anymore. And yet it was still a really powerful teaching, maybe not so much on the philosophical level, but just Rinpoche giving really profound advice on how to be, what to do, how to think about things. He was teaching on the diligence chapter from the Way of the Bodhisattva, and also on a set of talks that Gampopa gave. About taking the opportunities that we have now. Being diligent means being excited about doing virtuous things. So when you have something that's virtuous, that you want, something that's good that you want to do, you have to do it. You have to take advantage of that opportunity when you have it. So when it came to be this spring, and Rinpoche was in the hospital in intensive care, he wasn't receiving any visitors. And all of our monks and nuns are doing pujas day and night, 24 hours a day. Then for the next 7 weeks, most of the monks and nuns are doing pujas 24 hours a day. I had to do a lot of translation and other work, so I couldn't participate in as many of the pujas. But we were still taking turns doing pujas around the clock. There are 2 main pujas. There's the big one in the main shrine room, which is a big hall. It holds a lot of monks and nuns, and it was filled. We had, I think, 400 people doing puja. There was like 580 people total at Nama Buddha, but a lot of people have to work. So we had 400 people in the main shrine hall doing puja, and we also had people taking turns doing, in the nighttime the shifts were a little bit shorter, either 2 hours or 1.5 hours. In the daytime the shifts were a little bit longer, 3.5 or 4 hours. And so we would take turns. And so one night you'd be doing it at 10 o'clock. A couple nights later, you'd be doing it at 1 o'clock. And then the next night, you'd be doing it at 3 o'clock. Or you might be doing it from 8 till noon in the morning and reciting prayers, reciting a guru yoga, a particular meditational practice for Rinpoche that was written by the Gyalwang Karmapa. And then prayers of calling the guru from afar, which are prayers that where you're just thinking about everything, your own inadequacies and what you haven't done right, and asking the guru, please help me to do it right the next time. And while doing this, what really occurred to me is that for all the years that I served Rinpoche and served as his translator, I've never really been able to actually put the most important things that he taught into practice. Always there's been some sort of an excuse. I don't have time, I don't know how, I'm embarrassed to ask. And how do I do this? I asked Rinpoche what to do and I'm not able to do it. In my meditation, for example. How do I do that? And it was really only in when I went back last November that I was actually able to start. I made the commitment, I'm going to do more meditation in the mornings and evenings, get up early, devote my evenings to doing meditation practice, and asked Rinpoche about it and got some advice. And then finally I was actually just beginning, but because it's just beginning, it's like I'm really still at the very beginning stages. And then Rinpoche passed away. So there's an opportunity. I had plenty of opportunities over many years to put things into practice. And yet, because of my own reticence, my own shyness about things, my own lack of confidence in myself, I didn't do it. I didn't take the opportunity. So some people, when Rinpoche passed away, were very sorry, were very grieving because of losing Rinpoche, like as a person, as a father figure or a grandfather figure. And for me, I didn't have so much of that, but there was this pang, like I had these opportunities that I didn't take. And so our lives are short. We don't know how long our lives are going to be. When we have an opportunity, if you have an opportunity to do something good, something important, and you let it slip by, are you going to have that opportunity again? Are you going to be able to make such an opportunity again? When we think about it, when we come to the end of our own lives, and of course we have no idea when the end of our lives is going to be. We all hope that it's going to be 20 or 30 years down the line, but none of us really know. So when we get to that point, it could even be tomorrow, when we get to that point at the end of our lives, are we going to be able to say, I have no regrets. I've done something to make my life useful. I've done something to benefit other sentient beings. I've done something to become a better person, to practice Buddhism, to be able to do a little bit of meditation. I've done something. In my position, I've done what I could to take all these precious instructions that I've received over the years and actually do something with them. So if that day is tomorrow, will we feel like we've done something? There are lots of ways that we can, especially when you get involved in serving a guru, whether directly or indirectly, as several of us have, even if we're doing it, like volunteering here at the monastery, in a sense, is service to Trungpa Rinpoche, who started the monastery. So when we do that, of course that's good. Are we making the most of the opportunities that we have? Now, the question is, what is then making the most of the opportunity? Because you might think that this means that you immediately have to do like the highest meditation or whatever, and that's not necessarily the case. You have to do something that is going to be beneficial for you, beneficial for others. You have to do it with as good a motivation as you can. And in this lifetime, the odds of any of us becoming a Buddha in this lifetime are frankly relatively slim. It's not that it's impossible. It's actually quite possible if we put enough diligence into it, but most of us are not in a position where we can be that diligent about doing something virtuous. So you have to do something that's going to make this life meaningful, even if it doesn't lead to Buddhahood. You have to have that focus for the future. I want to achieve something. I want to do something good for myself. I want to do something good for all sentient beings. I want to do something. I want to be able to achieve Buddhahood. Whether it happens in this lifetime, whether it happens in another lifetime, it's up to us and the amount of effort and diligence that we put into our practice, into our service, and the attitude that we do it with. So we have to think about the opportunities that we have. We have to take an opportunity when you have that opportunity. And then you have to do something with it that makes it meaningful. So we're all at different stages of where we are in terms of practice. And practice I'm is using as a very loose term because there are different levels of practice. And practice doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be sitting down on a cushion and doing meditation practice. It might mean that, it might not, because different people are at different stages. I know several people who are very devoted, who have done a lot of service. In many of the centers where I go, there are people who are always there working and serving, and yet they don't feel like they can sit down and actually do meditation. There are monks who work really hard. There are nuns who work really hard, and yet they aren't really able to get down and sit down and meditate. And it just happens with some people. Sometimes it's that people are a little bit reticent to do it. So the question is, what can you do? No matter whether you're offering service, whether you're offering gifts or donations, or whether you are practicing the discipline, or whether you're practicing meditation, what can you do that will make your Dharma activity to be more meaningful and beneficial? And a lot of this comes down to your motivation. And it's, for myself, I think that the best thing is to really work on developing loving kindness for all sentient beings, because this will make anything that you do go more easily, both whether you're doing a Dharma activity or in your personal life, or dealing with society and everything that you're doing. The more we develop loving kindness, and then once you have loving kindness, then compassion comes. And when you have compassion, then you can start developing bodhicitta, the wish to benefit all sentient beings, bring them all to Buddhahood. So it starts with loving kindness, and so we have to do what we can, take the opportunities we have to meditate on loving kindness in this lifetime, and develop it as much as we can. So loving kindness is like when you feel this wish that you would just really love to do something that would make other beings happy. And sometimes this is confined to or this is particularly focused on a certain being. Like parents often feel just total love for their children. They want to do whatever they can to make sure that their child is going to be happy. And sometimes that means that they'll work themselves to the bone so that their children can have a good education, go to good schools and whatever, because they think that'll make their children happy. Or other ways, sometimes like a parent holding a small child, it's just like, I'll do anything for this baby. That's the kind of feeling of wishing that we can bring benefit for all sentient beings. You start about with one, and you might think about it in terms of a child. If you have a child, you might think about it in terms of your parents having that wish. That's the wish that you have, the wish that being be happy. We all have the capacity for this, and we just have to unlock that capacity. It's like there's an infinite amount of love inside of all of us. We all have Buddha nature, which is the loving nature of the Buddhas. It's present within all of us, complete and full. It's just hidden by all of our thoughts and normal activities and just forgetting to look, just not knowing how to look for it. So we have to uncover a little bit at a time. And as you uncover it, it's like, at first our compassion and our love and our compassion is limited. It's for a few people, a small circle. And then there are a lot of people who we just don't have any feeling for one way or the other. People and beings we just have no feeling for whatever. I mean, if you are looking at an anthill, most people are not going to be thinking about those individual ants with loving kindness and compassion because they're ants. There are too many of them. And then there are beings there who cause us harm. So like usually it's people for us. People who give you a hard time, people who have mistreated you or who threaten to mistreat you. And it's very hard to have love for them. Hard to wish that they be happy too. So our love and our kindness is limited, not in its nature, but in the way it's being expressed. The infinite love is there. So as we train ourselves in developing love, loving kindness for all sentient beings, it starts to get larger and larger and larger. And as it does, there's actually no limit to how much loving kindness and compassion you can have. Because the only thing that limits us right now, the primary thing that limits us is our bodies. The example that is given in the text is if you want to train yourself in jumping, the high jump, you can train yourself, and I think most of us are beyond our prime high jumping years, but we could train ourselves so that we could actually do a little bit of high jumping if we wanted to. If we weren't too concerned about, broken bones and such, we'd be able to train ourselves pretty well. And we'd be able to get better. But there's a limit how much you can get better, especially when you get to the ages, when you get beyond your 4th or 5th decade, not to mention later. It gets harder. There's just a limit to what our body will be able to do. But the mind is different. There's nothing that limits the loving kindness in our mind. The only thing that limits is temporary. It's our habits of thinking in negative, harmful ways about other sentient beings, reacting to things out of anger or stress or disappointment or feeling inadequate or whatever we feel. Those are all thoughts. And when it comes down to it, all of those thoughts are actually focused on me or mine, but primarily me. And those are the thoughts that create the difficulties and the stresses in our own lives. How is it going to turn out for me or the people, or me or my group, my family, the people I love? And you're worried about that, and you don't feel the same way about other sentient beings. And so this creates a dichotomy. When your love is limited by these thoughts, then your love is not really true love, because there's an element of aversion to anyone who's going to threaten you or your family or the people you're responsible, the people you love. So when you're dividing groups into this is my group, this is not my group, then automatically you have a little bit of aversion for the not my group. And it's like, keep my group safe, keep my group happy, and then there's another group. This is just natural. If you find yourself feeling this way, it's not like there's something defective with you. It's more a question that we have these negative thoughts just out of a matter of habit. So we have to train ourselves in thinking of other sentient beings with a good heart, being kind, wishing that other beings be happy. You start this by meditating on it for people who are close, who you feel like have been incredibly kind to you in this lifetime. You can just feel unreserved love for. Traditionally, this is, we say we meditate on it for your mother. In Western culture, sometimes people have complicated ideas about parents, and so Westerners in particular often have difficulty with this. So you just figure out who is it who's been unreservedly good for you, someone who's treated you well. With your mother, I mean, no matter what your mother did later, she birthed you, she fed you, she changed your diaper, she kept you alive. No mother, you wouldn't be alive. Maybe nurtured you for years while you were little more than just a worm, taking care of you and thinking about that, the gratitude for everything that the mothers do for you. And if not your mother, then there's someone else who's done a lot of good for you in this lifetime or you wouldn't be here. You think about them and imagine them and wish, I really wish that this being be happy. What can I do to make this being be happy? I want them to be safe. So there are varying meditations on doing this that we don't necessarily have time to go through all of this, but it really comes through appreciating the good things that this caring person, your mother or whomever it may be, appreciating the good things they do, and remember wishing, and then wishing that they be happy, the kind of feeling the gratitude, wishing to repay them, wishing that they be happy. And then you can think about a slightly larger group of beings. Maybe your family, your brothers, your sisters, or good friends, and wishing that they be happy. Really thinking about them and wanting them to be happy. Then thinking about the people. Traditionally it says people in your town, but when you're in a town like Richmond where you've got a couple 100,000, how many people? Lots of people here. More people than we can really think about. If you think about people in your immediate community, maybe your immediate community is a little bit smaller. But thinking about all these people with loving kindness and compassion, remembering them, wanting them to be happy, then you gradually work out to people whom you don't really know, don't really care, but you kind of recognize, and then you just think about all sentient beings. And then you start thinking about, traditionally we call them enemies, your adversaries, the people who have harmed you or you're afraid are going to harm you in some way, and trying to develop loving kindness and compassion for them. Until you feel like you can have loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings. We have so many opportunities to meditate on loving kindness and compassion. When you're walking outside, if you look down a little bit at the sidewalk, you'll see a lot of bugs there, a lot of ants and insects and so forth. And you can think about them. When you see those ants and insects, you can think to themselves, what can I do to make them happy? What can I do to really benefit them? Now, there might not be anything you can do in this lifetime, which case means that would mean that you would want to make the aspiration in the future, I want to be able to help these beings. That also trains your mind. Thinking, you see another being, human, animal, whatever you see, if you think, you see that being and you think to yourself, what can I do to help make that sentient being happy? There may be nothing you can do at the moment. But if you think about that and you make the aspiration in the future, I want to be able to do something for this being, this particular being. Then in sometime in the future, as you know, we have an incredible web of interdependence. At some point, some connection will come, and maybe then your aspiration will come through and you can do something to benefit that being. Who knows? If you make the aspiration, there's a possibility of it happening. Even if nothing ever comes of it in the future, the fact that you're making that aspiration now trains your mind in thinking about other sentient beings with loving kindness, the wish that they be happy. So when we're going around, if you pay attention, there are lots of other sentient beings. If you take the bus or the SkyTrain, You have so many opportunities to be able to think about other centuries. Now, it's not like you're going to be sitting there on the SkyTrain looking at people. Oh, may you be happy. You don't want to look like some sort of mentally ill person on the SkyTrain. You stay normal, be natural, be a regular person. But just think in your mind, may these people be happy. When you're stuck in traffic going up Oak Street at 9 o'clock in the morning, there are all the people on the other side in the other cars. And you can think about them. It's harder when you're in a private car than when you're on public transportation. This is another good reason to be environmentally conscious and take public transportation, because you have more opportunities to meditate on loving kindness and compassion. When I visit Hong Kong, a lot of the other monks in Hong Kong always take taxis, but I just go for the metro. There's nothing like the metro in Hong Kong the MTR in Hong Kong, where you can get on a subway train packed with thousands of people standing cheek to jowl. And there's so many people there that you can think about with loving kindness and compassion. It's just a really wonderful, wonderful thing to do. So you take the opportunities you have. You don't really have to change I'm not going to say that you have to start taking public transportation ever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when you have an opportunity to think about other beings with loving kindness and compassion, you should do it. This means basically anytime you see someone, to remember, wouldn't it be nice if I could do something to really make that being happy? So a lot of us come into the Dharma wanting to do something that's going to help us in this lifetime. It's natural and it's not even cultural, it's just part of being an ordinary sentient being. We have trouble seeing anything beyond the scope of what we experience around us. It says in the text that we're all like kind of short-sighted. We have a kind of myopic worldview because we only see things around us, and we see it in a very highly subjective way, filtered through our own experiences. And that makes difficulty for us. So if we want to get beyond that, we need to take the opportunities that we have to do whatever we can to become better people. That's like the first step. If you're not a good person, if you're not making yourself a better person, then trying to do meditation isn't so helpful. I think I heard, am I right about this? The American military has people teaching the soldiers how to meditate. But not so that they can become better people, but so that they can kill better. So meditation on its own is not actually necessarily good or bad. What makes it good is if you have a good motivation. So we need to develop a good motivation. Otherwise, it's just learning how to concentrate. And when you're concentrating, you can concentrate on good things or bad things. So we have to make a choice. If you want to do something that's going to bring benefit to yourself and others, you need to make sure that you're doing it with a good motivation. Or another famous example is, the basketball coach who was into Zen and teaching all his players to meditate so that they could win championships. Which is not as bad as teaching people to meditate so that they can kill better, but it's still not exactly entirely neutral. Of course, there's some benefit to it for those people, I'm sure, even beyond just being able to focus. There's some benefit that's coming from it, but if we want to bring ourselves benefit now, the main thing we need to do is sort of begin to change the way we think. The Tibetan word for dharma it's chu. And chu comes from the word to fix, means to fix. Chu. to change something or make it better. So what we're trying to do is make our minds better. So we have to take our opportunities to train our mind to think about other sentient beings with loving kindness and compassion. And as we do this, I think if you do this, I think you'll find that it brings tangible benefits in this lifetime, and will give you a chance of doing even more than that in terms of Buddhist practice. If we want to have real benefit, then you want to be able to have a better motivation, which means that you need to start with loving kindness and compassion. That leads to bodhicitta. And the more you have that motivation of loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, then the more powerful your practice will be. But it has to start with loving kindness. So I think that's most of what I have to say for today, that I've thought of to say, but maybe some of you might have some questions, or if you don't have any questions, that's fine. No. So sometimes at the end of these talks, we do a little bit of meditation. So let's start out by just doing a couple minutes of shamatha meditation. Shamatha means just resting peacefully, resting calmly. So sit up comfortably. Let your body relax. Open your eyes. In our tradition, we meditate with open eyes. Just let your eyes rest kind of down in front of you, looking off into space, slightly down. And just rest for a few minutes. Now let's take a little break. And since we were talking about loving kindness, what I'd like you to do now is to once again sit in good posture, relax, and then imagine either your mother or someone who has been just always there for you, someone good. who's been good to you, someone whom you feel just has always been there for you and supported you, helped you. So imagine them. And think to yourself that you wish that they be happy. Wonder, what can you do to make them happy? And then let go of that for a few minutes and just rest. Just rest. If a thought comes, it comes and let it go. Don't chase your thoughts. Don't dwell on the past. Don't anticipate the future. Just rest. Whatever's happening now. And then once again, think of your mother or whomever it is. Wish that she'd be happy. Then rest. Just relax your body. Relax your mind. And then once again, think of your mother or whoever it is. For several of us, perhaps your mother has passed away, moved on to whatever comes next. But we can still wish that she'd be happy. Whatever has come of her, we can still have that wish. So now let's take a break again. And this is a sort of practice. If you do it consistently, a little bit every day, then gradually you feel more for it. Like we're doing it for a few minutes now. You may have some sort of experience or some sort of a feeling about it. But if you leave it at that, then it's just a feeling that you had on one day. So if you meditate on this, whenever you have the opportunity. And Trungpa Rinpoche often said that rather than doing this as a formal meditation, it's best to kind of do it on the side of your life. He didn't use those exact words, but that's essentially what he was saying. So when you're out doing errands or so forth, if you can remember to think about the other people, the people who are having a hard time and therefore being jerks, the people who are just there, the people who are being helpful. Remember to think about them. Just have the wish, may these people be happy. The more you think about this, the more benefit you'll experience in your life and in other parts. The more we can develop the capacity of love, then the easier everything gets. The more stable your mind becomes, and it's beneficial for everything. This lifetime, Buddhist practice, whatever practice, even if you're doing practice in a different religion, all religions teach about loving kindness. And so the more we develop this, the better off we're going to be in any respect, however you look at it. But we have to do it. Meditation means that you need to do something over and over again in order to make habits. Develop those habits. Make them solid. And when you're doing it, it's not so much some sort of feeling. It's not like when you're meditating on loving kindness that you're always going to be feeling totally lovey-dovey, nice and happy, blissed out. That might sometimes happen. But that's not what we're looking for. There's a set of praises of the Buddha by Matarichetta. 150 verses in praise, and in one of them it says, I'm not going to remember the words exactly. He meditated on the causes of qualities, not the results. That's what is the cause of a quality? Not wanting to immediately say, oh, I want to have the lovey-dovey feeling of loving kindness all the time. If you're meditating for that reason, you're never really going to get there. But in thinking about, what can I do to have loving kindness? What can I do to develop it? What are the causes of this? If you think about that. The causes are what? They're remembering the qualities of other sentient beings, thinking about beings in a good way, not looking at their faults, looking at their good qualities. When you see faults, recognizing that they happen because of circumstances, not because of anything about the nature of that being. So then, trying to think about other beings' good aspects, wanting them to be happy. And if you do that, then gradually loving kindness will naturally develop. If you're always thinking, I want to have loving kindness, and then you're thinking about me. I want to have the feeling of loving kindness. You might be able to create an artificial blissed out state for yourself for a while, but it won't last. It won't bring you much benefit. So you think about the causes of what's going to bring you that quality that you want to develop. What causes loving kindness? What's remembering the good things about other sentient beings, thinking about them kindly, remembering the kindness that they've done for you in some way, through some connection, no matter how tenuous it might seem on the outside. So I think that's maybe enough for today, unless anyone has any questions. And if there are no questions, that's also fine. Then I won't have to strain my jet lag-addled brain any further than I need to. So whenever we finish, we always recite Dedication of Merit, which is it's basically the last thing in the book, page 217. And so what this is essentially doing is saying, well, we've done something at the very last page, 217. This is really thinking to ourselves, well, I've done something, hoping to do something good in the last hour listening to the Dharma. Now may it really be of benefit for other sentient beings, not just for me, but of benefit for all other sentient beings. And so we'll recite this. Well, we'll do it twice, once in Tibetan, and then we can recite it in English, although this is a different translation than I'm used to. Anyways, in Tibetan, O Sanam De Tam Je Se Bani Tom Ne Nye Bedranam Pam Shete Kegana Chi Bala Trubai Sibe Tolero Kunyudrosho. Through this merit, may omniscience be attained, and thereby may the enemy of wrongdoing be overcome. Troubled by the waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death, may beings be liberated from this ocean of samsara. Okay, so thank you very much. And of course, the important thing is that there will be tea served at 3 p.m. if you would like to join us for tea.